Díaz Pulido, Angélica, que va a dejar la presentación tal y como está, pero quizá valdría la pena correrla una vez más con las animaciones para que nos pueda indicar en qué momento cambiarla, solo para practicar quizá.
Perfecto, ya le voy a pedir a Fernando que nos ayude con eso y lo vemos en vivo.
Hola.
Buenos días. Ya vamos a compartir la pantalla. También veo que está pidiendo la palabra la señora Eliana Ulate, que va a estar también conectada virtual, pero vamos a hacer la prueba primero con la señora Díaz.
Listo. Entonces aquí yo siempre diría siguiente y la siguiente también, no pasa nada. En esta tiene 3 momentos, entonces yo diría siguiente, siguiente, siguiente y siguiente. Listo.
Perfecto.
Y en la otra tiene 3 momentos, siguiente, siguiente, siguiente y siguiente. Listo. Y ya.
Perfecto. No sé si usted está viendo en Kudo, usted tiene la posibilidad de ver live video o presentación. Automáticamente cuando se comparte una presentación, el modo de ver cambia a la presentación. Usted ve la pantalla, pero si el PowerPoint, pero si por alguna razón usted quisiera ver las caritas y las personas, puede poner live video y con eso se sale de la presentación. Pero creo que para para efectos suyos es mejor que la tenga en presentación para que vaya viendo la presentación.
Mejor.
Perfecto.
Listo, muchas gracias.
Con gusto, estamos pendientes.
Bueno.
Le damos la palabra. Eso, perfecto, gracias. Gracias, César.
Hola, buen día.
¿Cómo está, señora Ulate Brenes? ¿Cómo le va?
Muy bien, bien. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. ¿Puede hablar un poquito más?
Sí, déjame subir el volumen un poquito. ¿Ahí me escuchan?
Señora.
Perfecto.
Ya, buenos días. Gracias por haberse conectado antes. El procedimiento tengo en pantalla.
Stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres que para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement quédate en casa, que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
more than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SBDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo del público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, The Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
I'm equally pleased to welcome this morning a very notable panel of special guests. Mr. Ryan Hagman on my left. We have Ms. Elena Ulate Brenes, Ms. Angelica Diaz, and Mr. Mac Lambardis. We are grateful to have you here and for taking your time to participate in this morning's deliberations. I'm advised by the Secretary that we have the required quorum, and I now ask her to list the delegations present in alphabetical order. The Secretariat will also take note of others who join later on. Executive Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, distinguished delegates. Argentina, Bahamas, Barbados, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, the United States, Grenada, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, República Dominicana, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, and Uruguay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretary Osborne. The required quorum is established, and we can now proceed with the meeting. I now submit for consideration of this Council the draft order of business document CD/OD 128/22. If there's no objections, the draft order of business is approved. Colleagues, digital technology have advanced and transformed societies more rapidly than any other innovation in our history. The rapid level of progress of artificial intelligence in particular calls for a regional dialogue on policies and programs to address both potential risks and benefits that AI, automation, machine learning presents for the Americas. Some of the main AI challenges for Latin America and the Caribbean includes the limited number of skilled workers in the field and the lack of collaboration between universities and industry to connect education to the economy to address the problems and at the community level. Other issues are the low pace of adaptation of AI in business processes, the lack of available quality data, and the underdevelopment of the enabling regulatory framework to allow for new business opportunities based on AI solutions. Regional collaboration among OAS member states on artificial intelligence could hasten the pace of addressing both challenges and opportunities presented. Regional engagement will address areas of common interests, sharing data and resources, and positioning the Americas as an important regional actor in shaping the global development of AI. A deliberate approach to digitization and AI technology development is pivotal if the region wants to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Understanding climate change impacts, improving the health of ecosystems, reducing marine pollution, providing relevant information for environmental planning and decision-making based on evidence, reducing overexploitation issues of natural resources, promoting sustainable agriculture, and addressing water, energy, and food security nexus in the Americas, among other things. It is also very important to raise awareness in the region of the risks associated with the unethical and irresponsible use of AI, particularly in societies that are highly dependent on digital technology. Consequently, regulations as well as common framework are needed to apply the principles of responsible AI. Results can only be achieved if a deliberate effort is made to align policies, programs, actions, and incentives on digital transformation and sustainability. This session will provide an opportunity for member states to share policies and initiatives that promote the use of transformative technologies, including AI, for sustainable development as the region undertakes meaningful actions to tackle the climate crisis. We will discuss the importance of artificial intelligence for integral development and the opportunities for digital transformation for sustainability in the region from a public policy standpoint, including concerns and ethical questions arising from the development and application of AI technologies in multiple sectors. To help us navigate the various aspects of the digital transformation, artificial intelligence, policies, and sustainable development and integral development,
importance of countries developing balanced regulatory structures for AI, examples of countries that are leading in developing these governance regimes, and the steps companies are taking to promote trustworthy AI. Over the past decade, advancements in and proliferation of AI have increasingly positioned the technology as a pivotal foundation of future economic growth and national competitiveness. That is why, in recent years, more and more countries have taken to developing national AI strategies that address everything from government investment in research and development to the creation of guardrails around the technology's use. It is this latter category, rules and regulations to promote ethical and trustworthy AI, that I want to discuss with you today. To start, it is worth pointing to some of the work that IBM and others have undertaken to promote ethical and trustworthy AI. At IBM, we have long recognized that trustworthiness is key to AI adoption, and that the first step in promoting trust is the adoption of effective risk management practices. This necessitates that companies have strong internal governance processes, including, among other things, designating a lead AI ethics official responsible for an organization's trustworthy AI strategy, and standing up an AI ethics board to serve as a centralized clearinghouse for resources to help guide that strategy. IBM has implemented both recommendations, and we continue to advocate others in industry do likewise. Additionally, last year, BSA, the Software Alliance, published Confronting Bias, BSA's framework to build trust in AI. As the name suggests, this is a risk management governance framework that aggregates many existing best practices for AI bias mitigation currently in use by companies. But companies do not operate in a void, and while industry has a role to play in AI governance, so too do policymakers. As countries look at adopting rules governing the use of AI, IBM has advocated for AI regulations that rely on a precision regulation approach. That is, rules that are targeted and narrowly tailored to address clear and specific harms associated with use cases, and not the technology itself. Given the nascent state of AI, countries should focus on utilizing agile governance tools like soft law and co-regulation that can promote flexible and adaptable regulatory models and allow regulators to put experimentation into practice. The key here is to first develop an enabling environment for AI adoption, as opposed to defaulting to a less flexible regulation by enforcement mindset. This regulatory paradigm is not just theoretical. A number of countries have put these approaches into practice. One example is Singapore's AI Verify pilot program. This is a joint initiative between two Singaporean agencies, the Personal Data Protection Commission and Infocom Media Development Authority, that aims to create, quote, the world's first AI governance testing framework and toolkit for companies that wish to demonstrate responsible AI in an objective and verifiable manner, end quote. Likewise, Last year, Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry released a finalized version of its AI governance implementation plan, which creates a voluntary, consensus-based framework that aims, quote, to change governance models from conventional rule-based ones to goal-based ones that can guide entities such as companies to the value to be attained, end quote. The common threads that bind these approaches include a commitment to the collaborative development of rules, the need to embrace mechanisms that can evolve over time with the technology, and a shared responsibility between both industry and government. IBM recognizes the value of these types of collaborative engagements. Indeed, we have collaborated with a number of OAS member countries, as well as OAS itself, on initiatives aimed at promoting ethical and trustworthy AI, including the America's Youth Academy on Transformative Science and Technologies, the Argentinian Initiative to create a multidisciplinary center on AI, and the Center for Artificial Intelligence at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. These collaborations are but a small example of the totality of IBM's global AI policy engagement with policymakers, and we remain committed to ongoing conversations with governments around the world, including in Europe and the United States, where we are providing continuous feedback on the EU AI Act and the National Institute of Standards and Technology's AI Risk Management Framework, respectively. Looking ahead, it is difficult to pinpoint the precise benefits and possible challenges presented by any new emerging technology, and AI is no different. What we can say for certain, however, is that those countries that make the investment in this transformative technology today will reap the benefits in the years to come, and those countries that do not will be at a competitive disadvantage in the future. But while investments in AI research and development, procurement, and adoption will be important, countries will also need to invest time and energy in developing an appropriate regulatory environment that supports the adoption of trustworthy AI. To that end, I offer the following recommendation for OAS member representatives to take back to your country's policymakers. Support regulatory efforts that first aim to create and adopt enabling regulatory frameworks for AI, specifically risk-based governance that relies on voluntary, consensus-based soft law mechanisms that can drive the development of flexible and adaptive rules as the technology matures. Thank you for the opportunity to present my remarks today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hagman, for that presentation and the recommendation. And I'm sure when we get to the question section later on, we'll hear from some of the member states as well and what they're doing. But we want to thank IBM for its collaboration with the OAS and the region. Thank you. I'm pleased now to offer the floor to Ms. Elenia Ulate Brenes, and she's the International Cooperation Coordinator of the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Telecommunications of Costa Rica. And I see we have her connected. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Ambassador Yolanda Smith, Chair of the Inter-American Committee for Integral Development, Kim Osborne, Executive Secretary for Integral Development of the OAS, distinguished presenters, member states, and all of those who are following us on this presentation. I'm pleased to be able to be with you this morning and tell you a little bit about what we've been working on in Costa Rica, in addition to public policies, the solutions that we can share, and some examples of AI tied into sustainable development, or at the service of sustainable development. If we could show the presentation, please. Thank you very much. Next, please. Well, to begin this presentation, I'd like to give you some context about the Costa Rican situation over the last 10 years. The country has followed a strategy of diversification and sophistication, which has enabled it to evolve towards a productive matrix in which services and value added have become the fundamental part of the country's production and development, and therefore the technological changes have played a fundamental and preponderant role in this process. Those changes have had a major impact on the labor market, which has put a test to the different capabilities and ability of the society to adapt so as to be able to take on emerging technologies. In the specific case of artificial intelligence, it's been determined that we could have a much more positive balance and that it could generate more jobs than it would displace. This underlines and is aligned with the country's development strategy for the coming years. Nonetheless, in order to generate these jobs, in order to generate these capabilities, one requires early necessary training, which in many cases is different from traditional education and training. It doesn't compete with it, but has to go hand in hand with it. And I don't think that's any different for the rest of the region. In this regard, Costa Rica has guided or oriented its science and technology policies to a society and economy based on as spelled out in its 2020 policy, which was updated this year. The national policy on a knowledge-based society and economy establishes the major guidelines for action in the areas of science and technology. And the first incorporation of convergent technologies have been seen in the specific actions taken by the country. Yet it is in the National Science, Technology, and Innovation Plan that we can find reflected all of these principal strategic partnerships and emerging issues that converge so as to be able to answer to contemporary needs. As you can see on this figure, and there's something important that the previous panelists mentioned, Costa Rica is convinced that it is necessary to incorporate those ethical value principles and principles of transparency so as to be able to align all its policies, particularly policies for emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. This plan incorporates the principles of respect for human dignity, universality, human development, ethics, collaborative creation, and gender equality in strategic areas which are going to be cross-cutting for all technologies and issues that are discussed and proposed as specific actions to be carried out in the country: human talent, generating knowledge, and transformative innovation.
Específicamente el tema.
For the first time, we're including artificial intelligence. If you'd like, let's move on to the next slide, please. So we have four main areas covering artificial intelligence. One is developing skills and competencies in schools and in the technological colleges or vocational schools. We also have a studies program for technical certification in artificial intelligence. This focuses on full accessible AI for everyone. There's another initiative that we are pursuing is how to look for solutions and sharing good solutions throughout the countries in the region. This plan will allow us to work on defining AI strategy. We already have a digital transformation strategy in place that includes the need to take action focusing on AI. But specifically for AI and AI strategy, we don't yet have something. So we've been working on this. We're working on recommendations and principles, like with the UNESCO, with OECD. We've also worked with the Inter-American Development Bank for technical cooperation, which has allowed us to establish a working sheet so that we can set up an AI strategy. So this is something we're working on right now. What does it look like? We look this as a guideline and alignment of these principles that exist globally, that exist regionally. We're looking for a way to have a hearing so that we discuss this with the government sector as well as the private sector, academics, and civil society. This also includes, as you can see on the slide, elements that my colleague just mentioned, so that we have a successful AI strategy. We are establishing governance. Who should be the head of this? Who should be the governments? What should it look like? What international organizations should participate? How to have guidelines that include this. So we're working on this right now, and we're developing this at this moment. As my IBM colleague mentioned, it's important to include risk management. So this needs to be included in the different types of artificial intelligence, or all the different types of artificial intelligence need to take into account risk management. There is danger inherent to AI, and we need to include them following ethical guidelines. Subsequent to that, we've got project execution. This will be basically a database of national projects that includes international cooperation as well. And finally, execution and follow-up. We're working on a specific strategy, and I will tell you a little bit about it in a second. In 2023, we expect official launch. This is the general line that we're working on in terms of policy and laws in Costa Rica. So if we look at everything that we're working on and all of the benchmarking, all of the research, and all of the good practices that we share with all of the countries in the region, we have a few solutions that we would like to share. One is FAIRLAC. FAIRLAC is a network of different specialists, governments, academics, entrepreneurs, etc., for ethical application of AI in Latin America. There are 4 in the region, 1 in Mexico, 1 in Colombia, 1 in Uruguay, and the 4th was developed in Costa Rica. So in this network, the FAIRLAC network, again, it's specialists from different institutions, both government and private, and they get together to review different topics. This will allow us to progress as a society and better train people to understand and incorporate AI. We also have laws and policies, education, and cases or use cases. When we look at the different ministry actions, we're trying to strengthen with using these to try to strengthen our strategies and basically turn these ideas into actions. We've also have been developing skills and capacities that we can share with the rest of the region, including the development of an AI technician or AI specialist. We're in the final stage, and I will be sharing this information with you. We also have a curriculum to train these technicians in, again, the vocational schools throughout the country. Something else that has been very positively impactful in Costa Rica is to work with companies. Companies have platforms dedicated to artificial intelligence. This allows them and allows public servants and students and others to understand what AI is and how to apply it. This also improves civil society construction and building in Costa Rica. We also have alliances with different companies throughout the country, and we are working with government as well. So the government will also hire these people who have been trained in AI. So again, we're thinking of ways to include AI in training and in CVs so that these newly trained individuals can then work in the government and can work in private practice, etc., or the private sector as well. We also have the National Artificial Intelligence Lab, LANIA. This is a center where you can do research, use cases, assessment of public policy related to artificial intelligence. We're working with the network of university presidents and school presidents and directors so that we can include artificial intelligence in the labs and in the schools. In addition, we're also carrying out national and international projects through the LANIA, through the laboratory. And just a little note on international cooperation, I'd just like to point out our collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank. It has been wonderful in terms of developing this strategy. This helps us in terms of technical cooperation, international cooperation, and developing our own national policy. Now, some good examples of sustainable development and climate action that make use of AI. We've got Senat, we've got another one. So we've been able to use artificial intelligence. These are just two examples. We've been able to use artificial intelligence for sustainable development and for climate action. I have a lot of examples, but I really wanted to talk about these two specifically, just to show you concrete actions for sustainable development using AI. One is the Senat, which is the development of 3 technical applications for marine ecology and application in the Antillano fishery area in Costa Rica, manatee area in Costa Rica. National Geographic actually picked up on this. And it basically monitors the manatee population in the region. And how they move about regionally, where they're moving regionally, what they're doing regionally. The other project that uses artificial intelligence to improve transparency and efficiency of forest products. This includes a number of different areas, the Energy and Environmental Ministry, the CONAF's Timbers group, the Timberter Estonia group. This was established in 2020 and has been updated in 2022. We continue working. So this is just a bit of what I wanted to share with you. If you could just move on to the next screen. Again, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Because your presentation was very informative, and congratulations on all the all the initiatives that Costa Rica has been able to achieve thus far in this area. Thank you so much. I am now very pleased to offer the floor to Angelica Diaz, who is a researcher at the Alexander von Humboldt Research Institute on Biological Resources of Colombia. And if we can make sure she has connectivity. She has. You have the floor, Ms. Diaz.
Good morning. Would it be possible to share my slide presentation, please? Good morning. I'm Angelica Diaz. I am a researcher at the von Humboldt Institute in Colombia, and I focus on biodiversity and the ecosystem to make decisions in Colombia. Today, I'd like to talk about how we've incorporated artificial intelligence to improve biodiversity and preservation in the country, in Colombia. Colombia and worldwide, we have conservation objectives, and these can be measured through indicators, and you can get the data through different sources. And this is what we do at the Institute the von Humboldt Institute. We need to take the data and then analysis, then we need to take them, analyze them in order to use them to make the best decisions for public policy. However, we were producing data very slowly and producing information very slowly, and a lot of the things that were happening in the region, we were losing biodiversity and natural areas very quickly. So we needed more information. So this was affecting the nature, and we needed to be able to get more information better and analyze it faster. Also, some of the data was not including the value of this data. We were concerned about the speed that we were producing, or the lack of speed that we were producing this data, and how much we needed it for decision making in the country. So we needed new tools in order to make better decisions that were much quicker and much more clear and much more specific. And so that was our main objective. And that's why we placed our bets on alternative monitoring technologies. This is passive monitors that don't require researchers, they don't require people on the ground or in the field, and you can get much more of an idea of what's happening spatially and in terms of specific data. These passive monitors basically get all the information that you could possibly need through photography, all the information you could need on flora and fauna. And in these devices, you get information about the soundscape or the different types of sounds emitted by the flora and the fauna. This allowed us to increase our understanding of what was happening spatially and get much more data. We needed to have identification for this information. We wanted to understand what the audio, what it responded to, and this allowed us to understand what the threats were coming through and identify exactly what we were seeing and observing. For this, we used artificial intelligence, and that has a very important role because otherwise we can't understand what's happening. AI basically takes this information and detects exactly, automatically, species, what's happening, potential threats in various and diverse regions, and Colombia is quite diverse. So this allowed us to make a more automatic decision-making and centralize the data, and that we were able to identify global patterns that I'm going to show actually in the next slide. But we didn't do this alone. We connected to local networks, which is the Ecoacoustic Colombia network, but we also worked with other organizations throughout the world. We have these special solar panel devices that capture audio information and already include artificial intelligence to be able to analyze what the sound refers to. So you can find out when someone is cutting down or felling trees, and we know exactly where that is happening based on echolocation. We also know if someone is shooting a gun or if someone is involved in hunting. So we have these little, it's a little flower up on the upper right-hand side of the screen. We call these the little guardians. We also work with Wildlife Insights and the Colombian Network for Photography and Photography Analysis. This allows us to get the information from the Humboldt information and to incorporate information, related information from citizen scientists, common people who use their cameras and upload the information into the database. This big system also incorporates AI. It automatically identifies the mammals and the birds that are being registered. We have now over 1,100. We have over 1,100 areas that are being researched that have been uploaded and registered, and over 4,000 different species that were registered in Colombia. What kind of information do we get? We've been able to identify patterns in birds and in mammals to understand how human intervention has affected their activities. Here we have a case. If we look at the little arrows, the blue arrows, we see species that are becoming more nocturnal where there's high human intervention. And in yellow, they're becoming more diurnal according to, or to the extent that there is more human intervention. This affects the territories in general, and this information is the information that we need to use for our bioanalysis and public policies. When we're looking at nature-based solutions, this is the information we need. For example, for traffic, if we want to improve traffic in big cities, we can look at different pattern standard changes and based on what we're seeing here to improve traffic flows. AI has also helped us through the last year, has helped us show how we can evidence these changes in activity patterns in highly threatened species. For example, we look through the year. We have some little frogs in our country that are very active from August through April. And we've been looking at them year after year after year. You can see how climate change has affected very sensitive species like this one. We can see how it has changed their behavior, where you can find them. And look at this information when we look at nature-based solutions for these species and for the region in general. We've also been able to identify how certain threatened primates in the Amazon have changed or decreased their possible or how their possible detection of these animals has decreased as a threat. So we see that there has been an incurrence, and there has been a moving into these regions, and this has caused their populations to decrease. So we can see specifically which regions, where we need to intervene, what kind of public policy we need so that we don't lose these species. So specifically, these are the species that are most threatened, and you can see where they are. When you can see that the registration numbers are really low, we know that there has been a lot of human activity. We can look specifically to those areas where we can look for radical solutions so that we can have new colonizations of these animals. And in terms of implementations with new technologies like the guardians that I already mentioned, in the last month, just the last month, we have detected over 50 possible threats related to chainsaws. So you can see the areas that are being deforested, and we can then set up public policy so that we can avoid deforestation and subsequently the loss of these animal populations. When we look at all of the AI and technology information at our disposal, we have a challenge before us. And the challenge is how we can take this data, this information, and understanding of biodiversity, how we can make it available for decision making, and then establish a monitoring platform, a passive monitoring platform in favor of biodiversity. So we basically need to swiftly submit this data to citizens and to institutions. But again, citizens, it's the population that takes it. It's not just the institutions and the state, but it's also each individual, the person working in the field, the indigenous person, the communities, everybody who's in these areas makes decisions, and they need to have access to this information. If they have access to this information, they can take better decisions that improves the biodiversity or conserves the biodiversity in the region. So how can we do this? We can do this through cooperation. This allows us to promote the use of technologies and AI for preserving biodiversity. It allows us for transdisciplinary approach. It's not just fragmented activities, but we can actually work all together, how we can connect and work together to support biodiversity, and how we can train these AI algorithms, and how we can build data sets to train these algorithms so that we can get early warnings. We need to automate the analysis so we can get these early warnings. We also need to ensure the quality, the durability, and accessibility of the data and analysis. Again, the more data we have, the faster we're able to automate them, the faster we're able to analyze them, the faster we're able to use them for these early warnings. Going back again to ensure the quality, durability, and accessibility of the data analysis, to promote its use in general. We are placing our bet on this technology for biodiversity and improved biodiversity. And again, I'm available for any questions or comments you have. I'm more than happy to talk about anything related to biodiversity and AI.
A different perspective to what we're talking about. This morning it brings it all together, and we'll be happy if you can remain with us a little longer till we get to the question and answer section. And now it gives me great privilege to invite Mr. Mark Lambridis, Director of the Department of Sustainable Development of the OAS Executive Secretariat for Integral Development. Mr. Lambridis, you have the floor, sir.
Good morning. This is somewhat surreal for me. I am pleased to be able to say that I am now the Director for Sustainable Development within the SETI Secretariat. This is a role that is very dear to me, as I had spent 15 years of my life at the OAS as the chief for the energy section, and now have the real distinct pleasure to return as the Director for Sustainable Development. I want to start by thanking Ambassador Smith, Ms. Kim Osborne, Executive Secretary, and my new boss, ambassadors and representatives and fellow panelists. To the interpreters, I'm going to say a quick hello in Spanish and then I'll continue in English. Realmente es un placer poder estar con ustedes hoy en día. Estoy muy entusiasmado.
It's a real pleasure to be with you today. I'm very excited to be here working in the OAS with you and to fight for the future of this hemisphere in terms of sustainable development and for our environment.
Intended subject. First of all, it's a big day in my life and to be able to return to the OAS, but also I'm not an expert in data and AI. You've heard from those folks so far, particularly picking up on the intersection of AI and the natural environment, which our last panelist, Ms. Angelica, addressed so eloquently, and I'm really excited to hear some of her words. I'm going to ask if they can please put the presentation up. So what I'm going to try to do with my few minutes is to address some of that intersection between data, more broadly, and AI and sustainable development. And I'm going to try to connect some of that back to the current and potentially future stronger work of this department in the hemisphere. Next slide, please. What I'm going to do just real quickly is walk through 4 key areas of work from the Department of Sustainable Development, suggest some of the key issues around it, and then connect back to some of the ongoing work at the organization. Unfortunately, since 9 years ago when I left, now I need these glasses more often than ever. So to read my own notes, I'm going to put on my gafas. So let's start with water resource management. What are we talking about there? It's really critical to think about the fresh water of this hemisphere. That includes protecting free-flowing rivers. That means not damming them up unnecessarily or excessively or in the wrong places. Thinking about water quality for drinking and other uses, power generation, a resource so critical for our hemisphere, flood and droughts. All of these depend very heavily on data and AI, such as smart water monitoring sensors for management systems, including for transboundary basins, AI deep learning for advanced water quality modeling and prediction to support decision-making and improved water management, and to predict water conflict hotspots. So vis-a-vis our I just came over from the Nature Conservancy, so occasionally I'll slip with TNC, another three-letter acronym. So at the OAS, we've been working on water resources management in the Plata region, for example, with a decision support tool. That's an effort with the OAS since 2007. With the countries of the basins to look at and contribute to strengthening integrated water resource management capacity throughout the region. Some of the things we've been working on include the development of knowledge tools for decision-making in the event of floods and droughts and water quality issues, strengthening water management capacity, support to the implementation of the SAP, and consolidating regional cooperation with knowledge and information transfer. Next slide, please. These are all areas that we can continue to build and really focus in on the long-term sustainability of our water resources throughout the hemisphere. Sustainable energy. This is an area near and dear to me. As I said, I was the director or chief for the energy section. I have a lot of experience in renewable energy and energy efficiency. What are we talking about with regards to sustainable energy in the Americas? A couple of key things come to mind. One is access to electricity. That is the ability of folks to rely on sustainable electricity sources, or in particular on electricity versus basic energy sources, kerosene and batteries. We've come a very long ways, as the chart in the center of this frame shows, the development of electricity access. Now it's time to see how we transition that electricity generation to more sustainable sources. So both access and the sustainability of those sources. How do data and AI come together in this space? Multi-model smart sensors, for example, to monitor different aspects of energy generation, supply, demand, and consumption. Smart, efficient management of energy systems, smart energy planning, smart energy storage, trading, analytics. When I was at the Nature Conservancy, that organization recently announced a new partnership with Microsoft and Planet Labs. Hopefully we can bring IBM into this equation, my friend, to develop a global renewables watch, the first of its kind living atlas intended to map and measure all utility scale solar and wind installations on Earth, using alternative artificial intelligence and satellite imagery to map the transition of sustainable energy and the impacts on our landscape, on biodiversity. Next slide, please. If we consider issues related to climate change, we're talking about things like mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and risk, all with deep connections and reliance on AI and data. In this region, extreme weather and climate change impacts, including mega droughts, extreme rainfall, land and marine heat waves, glacier melt, are all having dramatic impacts on the Latin American Caribbean region. For example, temperature. The average rate of temperature increase in the region was around 0.2 C in the decade between 1991 and 2021, compared to half of that in the decade prior. Tropical cyclones, a particular concern for our member states in the Caribbean. 2021 was the third most active Atlantic season on record, with 21 named storms, above those in the previous decade with only 14 storms, and including 7 hurricanes. Precipitation, large contrasts in the levels of precipitation over the last decade between extreme droughts and heavy rainfalls. And the OAS has a long history of supporting member states to address the impacts of climate change. In fact, several of my colleagues, including Executive Secretary Osborne, just returned from a very successful meeting entitled Building a Science and Data-Based Agenda for Decision-Making on Resilience in the Caribbean. This was held in Dominica, where officials and key experts on adaptation and resilience met in a regional meeting for the wider Caribbean to share solutions to growing strength and solutions to the growing strength and frequency of natural hazards throughout the region. Next slide, please. And finally, the issue of biodiversity. Ms. Angelica really addressed this in depth, so I won't go far talking about biodiversity, but Latin America in particular is teeming with the widest variety on the planet of plants and animals and all forms of life. This is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. According to UNEP, around 60% of global terrestrial life and diverse freshwater and marine species can be found in Latin America and the Caribbean. And AI is key to monitoring these ecosystems, as we just heard, and wildlife interactions, mapping out the value of these systems and thinking about carbon storage, tourism value, mining in the intersection of all of these. This is certainly an arena where the OAS has tremendous capacity, and we look forward to both rebuilding and strengthening and adding value to your work throughout the hemisphere. Next slide, please. So I'm going to stop there with my interactions. Sorry, I'm one behind. One more slide, please. I'm going to stop there with my attempt to address the data and sustainable development approach and just say for a second, what can you expect from me? What can you expect from this department going forward? You're going to see a renewed commitment to strengthen the OAS's role and its value we bring to the region in sustainable development. I'm going to ask questions with all of you, particularly starting with Executive Secretary Osborne. What are we doing well today? What aren't we doing well? What can we do better? And what do you as member states want from us going forward? How can we integrate these programs with other initiatives throughout the OAS? And quite frankly, where can we find the resources to get this work done? So taking a little bit of privilege of the microphone today, I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to intersect with the agenda of today, but also to reintroduce myself to all of you and to offer us all a challenge to really work together to address some of the most critical challenges in sustainable development we're facing throughout the Americas. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, and we do look forward to working with you. And thank you for joining the conversation today. And I want to just switch it up just a little. Most times I start the questions, but I want to open the floor to member states who have questions for our panelists. I know later on in the program, we'll talk about your best practices and what you want to share from a country's perspective, but from the presentations we've had this morning, you do have the opportunity to ask questions of our panelists if you do have. Okay, and to start it off, we'll start off with the Dominican Republic. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Buenos días y muchas.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have a question for the representative from IBM related to the project you mentioned in Japan. Could you expand a bit on the details and just what that project entails? Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So a number of years ago, I don't want to say how many because I can't quite recall, but a number of years ago, the Japanese government essentially commissioned an initiative whereby they would develop a national AI policy. So they have actually had a national AI policy for probably, I would say, 4 or 5 years at certain stages of development. Specifically, what I was referencing was the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry released a somewhat finalized version of what we might call regulatory guardrails for artificial intelligence. Notably, these are not binding rules and regulations. So what they do is, for many dozens and dozens and dozens of pages, the document essentially outlines how the Japanese government thinks that companies should be thinking about various different policies as they relate to artificial intelligence. And so they look at everything from bias mitigation strategies to effective risk management practices. And then they also look at sort of the broader ecosystem of AI policy and AI industry. And they propose solutions in the future that might allow companies to collaborate more closely with the government on the development of more enforceable rules potentially. So essentially what it is I would think of it more as a roadmap to future regulatory development that creates that sort of enabling environment that companies can enter and work in a collaborative manner with the government to figure out what the best way forward is for AI policy development. So short version here would be what the Japanese government has is essentially a roadmap to future regulations. And in that respect, it's actually very similar to what the Singaporeans put out a number of years ago with their model AI governance policy. The only difference I would note between the countries, well, there are many differences between the policy approaches, but I would say the most notable difference between where the Singaporeans are and where the Japanese are right now, from my perspective, is the Singaporeans are actually essentially building something of a regulatory sandbox to work with companies, civil society, and other organizations to create a standards ecosystem, to build out the knowledge and the science and the expertise necessary to start putting into practice certain best practices in a way that leads us closer to developing more of a baseline set of metrics and measurements that we can use to actually assess what constitutes fair, unbiased artificial intelligence that conform to certain national policy expectations.
Thank you very much. I now offer the floor to the delegation from Canada.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to you. Good morning, Secretary Osborne, and good morning to all of the distinguished ambassadors and colleagues around the table. Chair, we would like to thank the presenters for the compelling and interesting presentations and information that they offered this morning. It's certainly an issue that we'll be taking back to our capitals and informing them of the work that is taking place in this important area. But my delegation wanted to take the floor this morning to welcome you, Mr. Lamberts. We're very, very happy to have you. And we wanted to note our full support for you in this role. We think that the questions that you're asking are absolutely on point, and our delegation looks forward to contributing to help you shape that vision and ensure that that your department and that the Secretariat continues to add value and pursue a path of real value add. So thank you, welcome back, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Canada. I now offer the floor to the Ambassador of Panama.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think my remarks are very much in line with what the delegation of Canada has just said, Executive Secretary Osborne. I also wanted to take this opportunity to welcome the new director and also to take this opportunity to note that in your presentation, you mentioned 3 points that make a lot of sense to me. And I do have a question about that. You spoke quickly indicating that one doesn't necessarily need to be an expert in something, but one must recognize the intersectionality among the different issues. You also expressed a view of the integral nature of these topics, comprehensive nature, and also how we can add value as we pursue development. And this is also my question, so as to continue this conversation and making ourselves available to continue to create that disposition within the organization. How can we break down this view in one way or another that sustainability is a technical matter rather than something which is of the utmost political importance for our states? How can we contribute to there being in this forum for political dialogue? How can we elevate the political discussion about integral development and that it truly be a forum, a sounding box for attaining our regional objectives? So that's the first question I ask, a provocative question in terms of this refocus on our work. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate of Panama. Well, the question is very important. It's not simple. I can't answer it completely today, but I agree 100% that the topic of sustainable development is comprehensive. One does not speak only of the environment. It also includes all aspects of development, economic development, for example. So we need to move from thinking about sustainable development as something merely technical, but no, rather it has an impact on all of us and all of our lives. And all government financing. So we need to think about the connection among various aspects of our environment, human beings, and the economy. As DSD, we have a limited capacity when it comes to human and financial resources. So what we want to do together with you is to think through how we can elevate this issue to a main level in terms of the political environment in this region, and what are the specific points where we can add value. And I'm talking about limiting the technical areas, not expanding and trying to do 20 things but rather what are the 3 or 4 areas where we can truly make a contribution to the future of this hemisphere.
Thank you very much. And now I offer the floor to the Ambassador of Costa Rica.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank everyone for the presentations, especially the presentation by Eliana Ulate, who cited as an example all of the actions being taken by Costa Rica to implement the policy of artificial intelligence in decision-making and in implementing strategic plans. In this regard, I would simply like to make a brief mention, and I'd also like to thank the presenters for the presentations, particularly the presentation by the new director. And we do welcome you because you mentioned the interconnection of different branches. And at the Costa Rican Foreign Ministry, we've institutionalized a strategy of economic diplomacy, one of the pillars of which is scientific diplomacy, and the role of the embassies and the missions approaching that connection between science and diplomacy. Well, we have successful examples where we have worked by bringing in together scientific institutions from other countries. For example, the USGS of the United States or NASA of the United States with our authorities in Costa Rica, so as to be able to carry out projects in which decision-making has a scientific basis. So you mentioned a series of examples, for example, remote sensing for cyber weather, for in disaster situation, also satellite images for decision-making having to do with aquifers and their replenishment, so as to know just where one can issue permits for, say, developing residential or commercial projects. So I just wanted to make this comment in the understanding that we also want that from the OAS, from this multilateral space, that we be able to contribute to our citizens and to our institutions, bolstering capabilities through science and diplomacy on the issues that you so eloquently described. So you can count on the support of my delegation, and I'd like to thank the chair for having convened this very important meeting. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Costa Rica, and also congratulations to you. It's a country that I know well, and it's one of the first countries to have a minister of social development. It's a country which has generally been successful in terms of renewable energy, being the basis 100% of the country, at least for part of the year, and is also one of the countries with the largest protected areas of the region. So I would also like to extend these words of congratulations to you as well.
To ask questions. I'd like to direct a question to Mr. Hagman. And thank you again for the presentation and for highlighting the importance of enabling environment for countries to harness the potential of artificial intelligence. My question is two-part. What are the niches where you see countries in the Americas playing a role in developing and benefiting from AI? And how can IBM collaborate with the OAS to seize these opportunities?
Well, thank you for the question. I'll start with the second question. How can IBM collaborate? We are a very collaborative company, so we are always open to thinking through new ways that we can work together with our friends in positions of policymaking around the world. I think what AI affords us is the opportunity to think about new creative ways of implementing things like agile governance. So IBM is certainly always looking to speak to policymakers about those types of issues. In terms of on-the-ground opportunities, I would probably have to defer to some of my colleagues who actually work on the ground in Latin America and the Caribbean and Central America. But I would just say this is sort of an open invitation from me to all of you. We are always happy to consider any sort of collaborative opportunities that you all think there might be alignment with. In terms of the niche areas in AI that the different countries in Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean are working on, I admit that I'm a little bit more ignorant about some of the on the ground developments in AI research and development there, more so than I am in some other corners of the world. Most of the regulatory conversation over the last year and a half, 2 years or so, has primarily been dominated by everything that's going on in the European Union. What I will say that I have noticed is, unlike in the conversations around GDPR many years ago, it does seem like there was a lot more interest in Latin America to take somewhat of a different direction than the Europeans are headed in. I also noticed this in conversations that I have with folks that are working in Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific region as well. It seems like there is currently less alignment and agreement on what appropriate AI regulations look like than there was on what appropriate privacy regulations look like, at least currently. And the debate may change moving forward, but I would say the one area that perhaps Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean can potentially be one space that they can potentially be leaders in, where you all can be leaders in, is thinking through what exactly a possible third way approach to AI regulations look like. Naturally, we at IBM and many others in the industry would like to see some degree of regulatory harmonization around the world. We do work in many countries, and so it certainly makes things a little bit easier. But I think that countries in Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean, thinking through maybe where there are currently gaps in existing proposed regulations from the EU and other countries, can make them more of players on the global stage in terms of regulatory developments. And as countries talk to each other, as regions talk to each other moving forward about what appropriate standards harmonization might look like, Latin America in that respect actually has a great opportunity before it to, I think, play a greater role in the development of these regulations than some countries maybe had the opportunity to play in the development of things like GDPR. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and I want to say that I hope this interaction here today is one of learning for you, as well as you've shared with us, because you'll hear from member states in a short while and you'll get a sense of what's going on as well. But thank you so much for sharing that. And I'd like to ask Ms. Ulete and Ms. Diaz, please, if you're still with us, to turn your cameras on so we can... Thank you so much, and I'll direct my first question to Ms. Ulete. And again, thank you for your remarks and for sharing the issues on AI from a Costa Rican perspective. My question to you, and it's two-part as well, what are the key areas where Latin America and the Caribbean policymakers can collaborate to address the gaps in the region with respect to artificial intelligence? I know you just spoke about that. And what are the issues where you think the OAS can focus to foster AI readiness in the Americas? If we can hear your point of view on that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, in effect, I am of the view that something that we need in the region, not only in Costa Rica, is capacity building. We've been very accustomed to a perhaps traditional education, and the whole thing about convergent technologies, well, we need to rethink and begin to generate other skills and abilities and intercalate to different sciences so as to be able to have adequate results. Another important aspect that I consider fundamental, and we can work on this at the OAS and in the countries of the region, is incorporating women in STEM issues so that they can become more involved in jobs and research, not only on artificial intelligence, but also all other convergent technologies. Why? Well, because we think the more women who join, that the more development there will be, and that we will be able to attain parity and equality that is going to benefit the entire region. So I consider that The actions we need include capacity building, both hard skills as well as soft skills, as well as incorporating the gender issue and gender science in all STEM issues, and also incorporating science, engineering, and so forth. This needs to be worked into the vocations of youth. The kids, they need more guidance on all of this because this is where there's going to be more development and more work, and we need to work on this in the region. I think that the OAS is a fundamental agency to support the countries of the region to develop those capabilities and incorporate these issues so that artificial intelligence, and not only artificial intelligence, can expand and be applied to a great extent in the countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for articulating these 2 points so very well. The gender perspective and the fact that we do need to build capacity, and that's through training. And I know you did speak earlier about the lab. Thank you so much. And my next question is to Ms. Diaz. How can we foster more collaboration among universities and research centers in the region to provide practical solutions to advance sustainable and resilient green economies and societies in the OAS member states?
I believe that relationships between universities and research, well, those relationships have already been built. The link that we need to strengthen is how that knowledge which is generated in academia can reach decision makers and actually have an impact on public policy. And this is through information platforms that give visibility in a much more user-friendly way than we do through the traditional means, which say scientific articles. These need to be able to reach different levels and be capable of being absorbed by citizens in different regions as well as different sectors in the country or globally who have to attain the sustainable development goals that we have locally and globally, but also to help us bring about conservation actions so as to be able to safeguard the life of species in the long run. Research needs to be strengthened through international cooperation. It's likely that we have particular developments in each different country, and I think insofar as we can have, say, roundtables or a way of giving more visibility to information such as this meeting today, can probably strengthen processes. It's likely we don't need to start from scratch in the different countries. Rather, we can have a vision of the whole region where among us all we can build collective knowledge and support one another in bringing about that massive exchange of data, information, and technologies.
Thank you so very much. I do appreciate you answering the question so very well. And what I picked up this morning was the intersectionality between private sectors, the academies and universities, and the public sectors as well. So it's an all-of-society approach to make sure that we have these synergies. And to Mr. Lambredis, I think it is. Say that again. I said it right. Oh, there we go. I know you shared with us some of your perspectives this morning, and thank you so much. You touched on the priorities and the critical areas for the OAS under the scope of the area of sustainable development. You did share with us as well some of the questions that you hope we can answer during your time here, but I just want to ask, do you have any key recommendations on how the OAS member states can support these priorities?
I guess my answer is quite simply open dialogue. I really want to encourage a conversation through which we can put our cards on the table and really identify critical priorities and then begin to target efforts, resources, energy towards addressing those challenges. We know the challenges are massive and we can't do everything, but where are those areas where a unique organization like the OAS with tremendous convening power, access to technical knowledge and commitment can add value throughout the region. So I'll just simply say, Madam Chair, be open to dialogue and then really roll up our sleeves and work together to address these challenges.
Thank you very much. And before we get into the dialogue with member states, I'd like to offer the floor to our Executive Secretary, Kim Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I could not allow us to continue without responding to two things. One, to really congratulate all member states. We heard from Costa Rica and Colombia and what they're doing, and it's really just brilliant work. So congratulations, and I hope that we can share those experiences with other member states. The ambassador from Panama raised an important issue that I wanted to respond to, Ambassador, specifically. I think what we heard in Dominica last week, as we had this regional dialogue on developing a mechanism for science and data to inform decision-making at the policy level. What came across was, in very many of the discussions, was the need to link foreign policy with sustainable development, right? Because what you're doing as advocates and representatives of your country is elevating your country's needs, what your countries are doing within the national context to share with the world and to determine how best organizations such as the OAS can serve the needs of our member states. How best can we as a region develop collectively? So I would submit that what we need to do here is to have more dialogue around building policy consensus for the region. As we look at, for example, going into some of the international meetings, can we have those discussions as to what our country's positions are, going, for example, to COP27? Can that dialogue and the sharing of information and the policies that we want to advance at the international level, can we do so within the context of the OAS? So, Ambassador, I would say that this is a real issue that we have to take on within the context of CD, not just to look at the technical areas, which is what the Secretariat is mandated to do, but at the policy level where you sit to bring forward your country's foreign policy agenda, yes, but your development agenda and that intersection of the two for that dialogue within the context of CD. And before I close, Madam Chair, I wanted to also indicate that where we're going, I believe Ambassador from Costa Rica mentioned the need for science and data to inform decision making. I think that we're building that capacity within the Caribbean region. Last week, we had a discussion with the leading organizations that are working on science and data regarding disaster risk management and resilience. So NOAA, NASA, Geospatial Institute, Meta, the private sector, academia, all met, Harvard University, University of Chicago, University of the West Indies, all meeting within with policymakers from our countries to really determine what that mechanism for decision making looks like. So that when a policymaker is thinking of locating or relocating a community, what does the data tell us in terms of the propensity for floods, or the amount of rainfall that's going to take place, or what have you, so that we can make better decisions. And I think we really need to look at that across the board in all of our member states to make sure that decisions are made from an evidence-based perspective. And that's where we're heading, and we look forward to hopefully working with Costa Rica and the brilliant work that you're doing in that regard. And finally, Chair, I want to take the opportunity, you've heard from our new director, Mark Lambridis. I believe for a long time we've had this gap in sustainable development, one of the most critical areas for all of our member states. And I'm very pleased that we now have Mark Lambridis on board. He knows the OAS. He left us and went to the World Bank, went on to the Nature Conservancy, has worked internationally, and we are now back to where we can really build and work with member states to build their capacities in the area of sustainable development. Mark spoke of an integrated approach. Many of you know my vision of having a one SETI approach, where all the areas of SETI are working in a mutually supportive, mutually reinforcing manner, where the issues of science and technology, education and human development, sustainable development are considered together. And I would venture to say that what we need as well is an all of the OAS approach to our development needs, to a sustainable development need, as this is an area that is cross-cutting across secretariats. So simply, again, to thank those who have intervened so far, to welcome Mark Lambridis. We will be making the rounds over the next few weeks to listen and to hear where member states would like the department to go in terms of our work, which is of critical, of urgent importance to the region. So again, my personal welcome to Mark as part of my team, and we look forward to working with all of you over the next few years. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I do see a request for the floor from the delegation of El Salvador. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Chairman, and the guests on the panel. I'd like to echo the words of the Executive Secretary. And in terms of diplomacy and as representatives, what we can do to link these very important topics together, AI, digital transformation, and link it to a sustainable agenda in the Americas is absolutely critical. I'd like to add something. What we've done in the last few years in my country is the following. We've moved from policy to action, and I think this is a critical point. This is what our countries are demanding of us right now. They are clamoring for results. We do need to build policy, we do need to design policy, but we need to link them to alliances, to partnerships, so that we can have tangible benefits and solutions to the challenges that we're facing will actually come to fruition. So, Ms. Chairman, I recognize and I congratulate you for including this very holistic and ethic topic, AI and transformative technology, which is so important to face climate change in the Americas and the challenges we're facing in the Americas. My delegation would like to thank the experts that helped us today, that shared us with their information to help us with the analysis. And I'd like to recognize how much this is useful for us to make decisions in the region. El Salvador would like to support new technologies as a tool for building a society of knowledge, which will allow us to leap forward in terms of overcoming problems with poverty, exclusion, and allows for social and economic development in the country. The digital transformation challenges should be considered and should consider human rights, ethical needs, especially when we're talking about AI development. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present Dr. Mendez Cabrera, who is the head of technology in El Salvador, who uses technology tools and will share good practices that we have been following in my country, nationally and internationally, to face the emerging challenges and the costs and the ethics, the ethical basis that we use to further society and further sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd just like to give Ms. Diaz and Ms. Ulate the opportunity to remain with us if you do have the time, if your schedule permit. And if you want to stay with us, you perhaps can just take yourself off camera and we'll give the floor to El Salvador. Thank you.
Conlleva avances científicos y tecnológicos y con ello la necesidad.
We know that there's a need to adapt to globalization, and machine learning and investments have allowed us to focus on quotidian development through mechanisms of artificial intelligence. The Innovation Secretary has accepted this challenge to bring us to a new age with a new revolution and focusing on digital innovation. One of the challenges is transparency, better algorithms, data and engineering, human rights, democracy, political and cultural processes, environmental processes. From the Secretary of Innovation, we support innovation and digital transformation in El Salvador. Focus on the 2023 digital innovation. We are looking for a true digital revolution in El Salvador. We'd like to be the first Latin American country to sign on to AI ethics as supported by the UNESCO. We work together with our president and the First Lady. We are carrying this out throughout El Salvador. We are committed to this. We are designing a national AI policy that will include interoperability of data so that we can best take advantage of AI. We also work together with the, NGOs and civil society to develop initiatives to apply data science. We also share ideas and take advantage of data with the universities. We are setting up a successful AI program. We suggest that this methodology of data be regional based and intersectorial. This is the Secretary of Innovation, and we'd like to reaffirm our commitment to working with AI to support sustainable development. We are working toward a better country, better opportunities for everyone in the country. We understand that what the government can provide can be better than just the private market alone, and we are here to help and support that.
Secretary for Innovation of El Salvador, and thank you for what I thought I heard was an offer of cooperation. Thank you so much, and I'm sure Mr. Higman got just a little taste of what's going on in the region, what more is going on in the region. Before I open the floor to delegations and we get into the dialogue, I really just want to thank all the presenters this morning for taking time out of your busy schedule. And if I need to release anyone, consider yourself relieved, so you can go on to other duties. But if you can stay, I'm sure that the discussion would be very interesting. So if you can stay with us, I encourage you to stay. But thank you so much for joining us today in this discussion and bringing to light a topic that is just so important and so far-reaching for the region. So without further ado, I'd like to offer the floor to Panama.
Muchas gracias otra vez, señora presidenta.
Thank you once again, Ms. Chairman. The delegation from Panama thanks you for this invitation. I have really enjoyed this session, personally, and I've loved this exchange of ideas. Sometimes there's so many things happening at the OAS that you really can't take the time to take part in everything. But I believe that this new facet under the Secretariat is very important. And I'm looking for consensus. At least we have a consensus in terms of sustainable development, in terms of the member states, sharing ideas and hearing from each other and learning about AI progress and digital transformation has been wonderful. We'd like to take advantage of the opportunities with public policies that can give us concrete results for sustainable development. We'd like to work together in the region, through the region, and this will be the most effective way to face the challenges like overcoming gaps, digital gaps, and also international legal frameworks. COVID has shown how digital transformation is absolutely critical, and it actually was manifest in such a very clear way, and how important it is to cover these emerging needs. We need to embrace innovative technology to reach to overcome our challenges in various areas. Like AI is important and crucial to understand climate change, to strengthen the region's resilience in the face of disasters, reduce pollution, and promote sustainable agriculture. Given this, the Science and Technology Secretariat of Panama, SENACIT, and INCA signed a cooperation agreement. This is a center. We have established a center for agricultural development using technology. This year, the Indiatic AIPE was established, which is the Scientific Advancement and Information Technology Center. This center supports Panama as a country that generates communications information for everybody. We also like to take this space to reaffirm that climate change is a common challenge for all of us, yet we all face different elements of this challenge. We are looking to support advances and progress as much as we can according to our abilities. By 2050, we want to be one of the first carbon negative countries in the world. We are very proud to participate in Our Ocean in March 2023 in Panama. We want to continue supporting enriching dialogues that will allow us to find solutions to protect the planet from climate change. We reiterate our commitment to progress in the regional agenda for digital transformation that was signed in the 9th Summit of the Americas, and the Jamaican claim that was pronounced just last year.
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties this morning at our mission. Thank you, Madam President. O Brasil agradece a participação dos ilustres painelistas.
Brazil would like to thank the wonderful panelists who have shared their great practices and knowledge today. I'd like to talk about what the Brazilian government is doing and some of the good practices of our country in this regard. It's important that we defend emerging technology for sustainable development. We need to use data and intelligence in order to have access to data and to support cultural advancement. We support a cohesive, inclusive, and transparent response that is in accordance with the 2023 agenda. We work on multilateralism and the importance of capacity building for individuals and among countries. So, Chairman, the use of digital tools should be multilaterally agreed upon, focused on sustainable development. It's important to have an equilibrium between our environmental and financial requirements. Our biggest challenge is poverty throughout the world.
Including extreme poverty, is the great global challenge and an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. Na mesma linha, Senhora Presidente,
Madam Chairman, the 2023 agenda is established that we should not leave anyone behind, and this should guide all of our debates when we talk about digital transformation. AI tools for big data analysis have great potential for climate change, for being applied to climate change, including that these can be used for governance, for the methods and the what we signed off on Paris, and for political policy, and for the other objectives that we have signed off on. For Brazil, we have signed off on this. We look to greenhouse gas reductions and greenhouse gas compensation, offsetting, and this needs to be reviewed and monitored so that we can understand the mitigation measures, and we need to use this data so that we can have a basis for best decision making. With COVID, we've seen an increase in digital inequality, and digital information is absolutely critical. And if we don't address these inequalities, may also lead to financial and technological imbalances, which will put everything in risk in terms of sustainable development goals. The Brazilian government has looked to use artificial intelligence and digital transformation to improve these problems. I'd like to talk about some of the specific policies. In 2021, we launched the Brazilian Strategy for AI, which guides research, innovation, and sustainable development for AI solutions. We have different topics based on the OECD AI foci. This includes inclusive growth, sustainable development, well-being, and human values and equality values. As part of our axes or pillars, we look to stimulate an AI development team that includes a number of different aspects, creed of religion, completely focused on D&I. We also include the private sector and public sector. We also have a multi-sectorial governance that includes participation of entities from the public sector, private sector, academics, and civil society. Madam Chairman, just to conclude, I'd like to mention that we have a few things that Brazil has been done internationally in terms of artificial intelligence. We defend the reliability of AI and their ethical use focused on people, and they should be inclusive and focused on sustainable development. We've participated in important forums on artificial intelligence to share ideas and best practices. Specifically, I'd like to point out the Responsible AI Working Group. And that group is working on environmental artificial intelligence. As far as the UNESCO goes, we have different initiatives to recommend AI and ethics in different projects. This also focuses on sustainable development. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to learn from all of you and to share some of our good practices in Brazil. I'm happy to be learning from all the other countries in the region. Thank you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brazil. I now offer the floor to the Ambassador of the Dominican Republic.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and to Madam Himosborn, and the members of the OAS and our panelists today. We'd like to start this intervention today by thanking the opportunity for us to be at this session and for the panelists for such interesting presentations. As a permit, I also like to thank the conversations and the points raised by Panama and other members. This is an opportunity for us to hear about the experiences and progress made in other countries on a topic that is so important for our hemisphere. We get to hear firsthand of the experience of what IBM and what the region is doing and the world is doing. It's also an opportunity for us to identify opportunities that we can carry out in our countries and ways for us to continue to progress in this context. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Mark Lambridis, and for the support to our delegation, the support of our delegation in order to be able to help you on this. The Dominican Republic is currently undergoing transformation, and we're using a lot of platforms that use AI to predict and understand data tendencies and trends. When we look at the laws, we are establishing the ways we can set up an AI national strategy. This will be an opportunity for projects and plans where we can make decisions from the artificial intelligence generated in the country. The Information Technology Secretary has launched the first digital innovation lab in the Dominican Republic. This focuses on supporting institutions in terms of electronic departments and helping citizens have better access to government services. We've also developed technical projects focused on education, citizens' help, health, and immunity, smart city, and AI, transport, etc. This Madam Chairman. I just wanted to give you a quick idea of what we've been doing in terms of artificial intelligence, and I'd like to stress once again how thankful we are to the CIDI for giving us the opportunity to talk today and giving us the opportunity to learn from the other countries. Thank you so much.
To Ambassador Luis Elena Baños of Mexico.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mexico believes that artificial intelligence and digitalization are a unique opportunity to promote development and growth in our countries. This is an opportunity to address poverty and inequality throughout the region. Nevertheless, there are gaps in development. That is why we need to be responsible when we focus on ecosystems and the environment. My country recognizes that access to the internet is a human right, and access to information and communication is also a human right. Everyone should have the opportunity to be able to take advantage of these progress. We support human technological development to serve society, as established in our Constitution. In 2018, Mexico adopted the National Digitalization Strategy. According to the OECD, OECD recognized as a leading country through reuse of digital and initiatives like My Health and the use of artificial intelligence data to serve society. We have established national policies for interoperability, connectivity, data, and digital skills in order to support the legislation that governs our country. We have established clear rules for the economy so that we have a digitalized world based on ethics and agreements, so that we understand how data flow and algorithms should be implemented. We are part of the network for digital skill development and capacity building in the region. We are here working on digital projects for sustainable development in the country following the pandemic. That is why we have established a lab for development in artificial intelligence and data science, working with university students in our region. This is a project that seeks to promote developing new technologies for better social inclusion for the most vulnerable sectors of society. And we're giving support to the most vulnerable so that they can be involved in these initiatives. New technologies should become alternatives for the government to be able to serve society. In November 2021, UNESCO member states, during their general conference, recommended ethics on artificial intelligence. And this establishes the principles and values to really take advantage of this technology and to reduce the risks involved. A Mexican specialist took part in this. The UNESCO office in Mexico has established an AI committee, and the purpose is to have a multidisciplinary dialogue, promote multidisciplinary dialogue, so that we can establish public policies that are based on ethics, governance, and good governance in AI. This committee also focuses on working groups for policy to implement these recommendations in Mexico. This includes diagnosis of country data and ethics, the ethics that underlie AI, best international practices to understand and best use this technology for society. This will allow Mexico to participate in this digital revolution. Science should exist to serve and improve people's lives, which is why we are working and cooperating with other countries in the region so that we have AI that promotes and respects human rights throughout the region and respects human dignity. Gender equality, diversity, inclusion, all of this should be included. And we should take into account future generations as well. And also support improved economic opportunities for everyone in the region. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
I'll offer the floor to the Ambassador of Chile.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. Agradecemos.
Thank you. We thank all of the panelists on this session, AI has taken on a leading role in recent years in various sectors. We recommend the best routes to reach these objectives. We need to best analyze this economic data so that we can use them for best policies. There are a number of applications for AI, and these are changing the services that governments offer. This facilitates us in terms of making decisions and offering our links to society through channels, avoiding fraud, or best diagnosing situations, or just making best decisions. When we look at this, we need legal frameworks nationally and internationally to best take advantage of the opportunities that this technology offers us, and also to understand the adverse effects that could emerge. In Latin America and in the Caribbean, we'll only see an increase of 5.4% increase in GDP, worldwide GDP, with the use of this technology. The first important step is that the heads of state and the governments have accepted this digital transformation agenda at the recent Summit of the Americas. This is dynamic, resilient, to increase innovation, competition, and to look at events related to climate, health, and natural disasters. This is very important, and it's very urgent. And we need a quick, swift response.
La anticipación. Los fenómenos meteorológicos extremos, como huracanes, tormentas intensas y inundaciones, están aumentando en frecuencia e intensidad debido al cambio climático. Y aquí, la inteligencia artificial también ha demostrado ser un valioso aliado para predecir estos fenómenos y su impacto, y para permitir una respuesta más eficiente y rápida ante los desastres naturales. También es posible y se hace utilizar técnicas de inteligencia artificial para conseguir energías renovables, como la solar o la eólica, como hay buenas transiciones, más eficientes gracias a la predicción tanto de la meteorología como de la demanda energética. Quizás, estimadas y estimados colegas, cuando hablamos de algoritmos, playlists y rutas más rápidas para llegar a casa, nos deslumbra tanto cada uno de estos árboles que perdemos de vista el bosque. El bosque que conforman todos estos árboles con los que interactuamos a diario es, a criterio de Chile, la oportunidad de mejorar la calidad de vida de nuestras sociedades. Es, finalmente, garantizar los derechos humanos frente a una emergencia climática que expulsa cada día a miles de personas del disfrute de derechos económicos, sociales, culturales y ambientales imprescindibles para una vida digna, como son el derecho al agua y al saneamiento, a la alimentación, a la salud, a la vivienda y el derecho a un ambiente sano. Abordar eficazmente estos desafíos requiere un compromiso ambicioso y coordinado por parte de los Estados. Esta organización puede ser un espacio para ello, y pensamos que esta sesión ha dado un paso importante en esa dirección. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I now offer the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Gracias, señora Presidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My mission is thankful for the possibility of discussing this important topic in CD and also the valuable recommendations and remarks from the Humboldt Institute, which is a leading institution in terms of knowledge of conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, and with whom the SETI is negotiating a memorandum of understanding. We hope it is concluded soon. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome the new director of the DSD, Mark Lambides. We wish him the best of success, and we will support him as he discharges this mission. Madam Chair, reflecting on the impact and importance of AI for sustainable development and opportunities for digital transformation and sustainability of the region from the standpoint of public policy means taking a look at the strides that have been made by the governments of the region and the hemisphere with an integral view, contributing to full implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in the 2030 Agenda. In the case of Colombia, we have been able to position ourselves as regional and world leader in forging a public policy on artificial intelligence based on a complete or integral technical view. And both the CAF and the IDB helped us out in this regard. One of the characteristics of this policy is the importance it attributes to prioritizing analysis and implementation of recommendations for environmental sustainability. Madam Chair, Colombia recognizes the potential of artificial intelligence for forecasting patterns of climate change and improving energy efficiency. At the same time, it considers that in developing public policy guidelines in this area, it's necessary to be aware of the ecological effects of the new technologies, for example, in areas such as energy consumption and carbon emissions. In this regard, one of the main conclusions regarding the intersection of the possibilities and opportunities offered by artificial intelligence for sustainability is the use of technology for optimization and efficiency of natural resources, as well as for measuring climate forecast, monitoring biodiversity, and digital applications to agriculture. Also, AI and advanced analyses can contribute substantially to attaining our climate objectives and the sustainability objectives of the UN 2030 Agenda. A key challenge for its implementation is that the SDGs are all interconnected, which requires a major coordination among agencies. In the case of Colombia, an interministerial commission was created and efforts were aligned around the SDGs with an artificial intelligence project to ensure the highest level of commitment as a strategy for coordination to supervise the implementation of the SDGs and breaking down any isolation among sectors. Finally, digitization has great potential for transformations towards a more sustainable planet, towards a more decarbonized world with greater energy independence. One example of this is how more efficient solutions can be attained for energy consumption thanks to technological developments which seek for sustainable and eco-responsible consumption that can also account for metrics and measurements that allow for better and greater control of consumption and performance. Thank you very much.
To the representative of Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Executive Secretary Aspen, I'd like to thank the presenters for the very interesting remarks, and also I wish Director Lambides the best of success in his new role. The policy of Peru establishes giving priority to digital transformation with equity in order to guarantee inclusive, safe, and quality access to the digital environment, and so as to be able to take advantage of digital technologies in all regions of the country, considering their cultural diversity and the conditions of vulnerability in each population. In that context, we've drawn up the national policy for digital transformation, which is focused on fostering the use of digital citizenship thanks to the digital capabilities, and in tandem with this, Peru has designed a national policy for artificial intelligence, the objective of which is to give impetus to the development of artificial intelligence so as to drive greater productivity in different economic sectors, ensure interconnectivity and data transmission for timely use, bearing in mind the ethical dimensions that ensure respect for citizens' fundamental rights. The National Artificial Intelligence Strategy was designed with the support of international organizations such as the OECD, the OAS, and the IDB. Experts and citizens mindful of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the roadmap of the UN Secretary General for Digital Cooperation, and the OECD principles on artificial intelligence. The Peruvian strategy takes in the establishment of the National Center for Innovation in Development of Artificial Intelligence. It's going forward, and it has cooperation from the Republic of Korea to implement it. In general, mindful that the applications of artificial intelligence may affect certain communities and accentuate social gaps, the initiatives that Peru has been implementing are aimed at seeing to it that all Peruvians fully develop their digital citizenship, get to become familiar with technology, make use of and benefit from it, and can prevent the risks the new technologies entail. Some of these initiatives include establishing the National Network of Digital Innovation Laboratories that seeks to raise awareness among citizens, academia, civil society, and public and private actors as regards the importance of spaces for open spaces for innovation, making the use of disruptive technologies such as AI, along the having other technologies for smart cities, and allow for the participation of citizens as a whole in the national process of digital transformation. Also, implementing the national strategy of digital talent. Well, it takes into account the diversity of communities. The focus is based on interculturality, the territory, giving impetus to women's participation in technology, and tapping the digital technologies of the fourth industrial revolution. In addition, protecting human rights in the digital space has led to a official but non-binding document that draws up the various rights in the digital sphere. Finally, I'd like to note that Peru on the 11th and 12th of November will be hosting a meeting of governments on digital transformation in the Americas, which will be a great time to share experiences in e-government and digital transformation and to identify the common challenges for the development of public policies that have to do with taking advantage of disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I now offer the floor to the interim representative of the United States.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. On behalf of the United States, I'd like to express my gratitude for the excellent presentations of the distinguished panelists today. I hope some of them are still with us. And also to thank the Chair and the Secretariat for including this topic on our agenda and calling this meeting today. I mentioned to a friend yesterday that I would be speaking at the Commission on Development, and the topic was artificial intelligence. And her initial reaction was, that's not a development topic. But of course, we know that it is. I think all of us in this meeting appreciate that anything which allows us to better analyze data, better collect information, better make decisions on that data is something which allows us to achieve our development goals in a more efficient, a more affordable, and a more climate-friendly way. Artificial intelligence will be essential for our future economic growth, for our health and well-being, and also for the protection of our democratic values. And of course, as part of the regional agenda for digital transformation that our leaders adopted at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles in June, we committed to, and I quote, the responsible and ethical development and use of artificial intelligence systems and other transformative technologies while protecting individual privacy and personal data and promoting equity and respect for human rights and inclusive growth. In addition to that commitment, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy earlier this year published a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which suggests 5 principles for the responsible development of AI technology. Those principles are safe and effective systems, algorithmic discrimination protection, data protection, notice and explanation, and human alternatives. It is the policy of the U.S. government to promote the responsible design, development, and deployment of artificial intelligence in line with democratic values and respect for human rights. We believe that scientific and research innovations in emerging technologies such as AI have the potential to uplift and empower our citizens, to strengthen our resilience against climate change and against natural disasters, and to create sustainable industries based on clean energy. Our goal is a strong network of countries, companies, and universities connected by shared values and a shared commitment to design, deploy, and use technology for the benefit of society. Together, we can strengthen open and interoperable systems, encourage the freedom of opinion and expression that lie at the heart of innovation, and defend each other against malign actors who are intent on acquiring technologies that could be used for good and instead use them for harm. The United States welcomes the opportunity to collaborate with like-minded partners on governance approaches to technology that will advance innovation, take a risk-based approach, address shared global challenges, and reflect and protect our shared democratic values. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the United States. And I want to thank member states for sharing your country's experiences, articulating your needs, offering solutions, and cooperation as well. I got that during the interventions. I see no further requests for the floor. Therefore, I propose that CD thank the experts for their contributions and instruct SEDI to document and follow up on the collaboration opportunities with partner institutions identified during the dialogue, and I heard quite a few, and the interventions made by delegations. And if there are no objections, it is so decided. Before we move on to item 3 on our agenda, I just want to ask our guest if he does need to leave. Yes? So I would kindly give him a moment to excuse himself, if you bear with us, please. The next item on the agenda refers to 3 meetings of ministers that are scheduled to take place during the current semester in the framework of CD. For better organization, I would propose that we consider each meeting individually. The first meeting is the 9th Inter-American Meeting of Ministers of Culture and Highest Appropriate Authorities, to take place October 27th and 28th in Guatemala. This item, with regards to the ministerial meeting on culture, refers to the list of observers and special guests. In accordance with Rules 17 and 18 of the Rules of Procedure on Ministerial Sectorial Meetings, the provisional list requires the authorization of this meeting. To comply with the rules, CD approved the proposed list of observers and special guests in document CD/doc 36/22 revision during its regular meeting held on September 27th. However, the host country would like to add a special guest to the list, and that person is included in document CD/doc 3662 revision 2. If there are no objections to the new version of the document, I propose we agree with the list as it stands right now. There being no objections, it is so approved that I have not banged this for the day. It is approved. We move now to consider the 5th meeting of ministers and high authorities of social development that will take place in the Dominican Republic in November 2022. That's next month. Colleagues, to comply with Article 14 of the Rules of Procedure for ministerial meetings of CD, we will now proceed with establishing the order of precedence for delegations of member states and permanent observers during the 5th meeting of ministers and high authorities of social development. Delegations are reminded that, as outlined in Article 2 of the same Rules of Procedure, and I quote, "The principal representative of the delegations that are next in the order of precedence established in Article 14 of these Rules of Procedure shall serve as ex officio as vice chairs of the ministerial and other high-level meetings, and shall replace the chair in the event of the latter's absence or impediment."
In accordance with Article 14 of the aforementioned rules, the order of precedence of the delegations for each meeting shall be established in alphabetical order in Spanish by the corresponding regular and special meeting of CD, once the first place has been drawn by lot. The order of precedence of the permanent observers shall be established in the same manner. So now we will proceed to draw the name of the member state. Guatemala. The first place among member states is Guatemala. Now we will draw the name of the permanent observer that will take the first place. It's a bigger box, a deeper box at least. Italy. The first place among the permanent observers is Italy. We move on to item 4, and to begin the consideration of the following topic, I offer the floor to Ms. Maurice Robert, Director of the Department of Economic Development of SEDI, who will refer to the rules, who will refer to the status of implementation of the triennial ministerial cycle of the sectorial process of science and technology and the proposed adjustment to the calendar. Ms. Robert.
Thank you so much, Chair, and allow me just to welcome my good friend Mark here. Welcome back. So now, with respect to the status of the 3-year ministerial cycle of the sector of science and technology process, let me just say that as indicated in CD, the document CD/Doc 370/2022, the 3-year ministerial cycle for science and technology has been slightly delayed from the deadline set in the general guidelines for sectoral ministerial processes. And this is due essentially to the delay in the elections of the authorities of the COMCIT, of the authorities of the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology, as a result of the time it took to coordinate the agendas of the different ministries interested in presenting their candidacy for the COMCIT. As you know, the COMCIT authorities were elected at the city meeting on August 30th, 2022, just a few months ago. Jamaica as chair and with 2 vice chairs, Peru and Chile. And now we have the planning meeting of the authorities of the Science and Technology Ministerial process, which will take place next week on November 2nd. So I should say that even we're asking for, of course, CD to approve this new revised schedule, a calendar of activities. But I should say that the activities, even though the election of the authorities did not take place until late August, did not stop. In fact, a number of activities took place in 2022 as a follow-up to the ministerial meeting, which was held in December 2021. Just to I know we have very limited time, but just to highlight a few activities. Prospecta Americas was on technology foresight, a seminar that brought together governments, scientists, academics, and private sector representatives. Took place in Hidalgo, Mexico in May 2022. We also, before the Summit of the Americas, Jamaica presented the result of the ministerial meeting to the Summit of the Americas, and one of the groundbreaking initiatives that came out of the ministerial meeting in December 2021, the OAS Youth Academy on Transformative Technology, began really in earnest in 2022 with, in particular, one course on augmented reality that we are offering in cooperation with Meta. As you know, the OAS youth academy on transformative technology. Its goal is to train, certify, and expand job opportunities for 10,000 youth in transformative technologies by 2024. And in that regard, to address the region's skills gap and workforce readiness to fill the jobs in the digital and innovation-driven economy. So this course that I just referred to with Meta, we are now at we just launched the third level, and once the participant, those who are taking the course, once they are done with the third level, they can actually take an exam, get certified, and will have access to the network of Meta, Facebook, to actually get a job in augmented reality. So therefore, going back to the ministerial process per se, what is planned is that there will be the planning meeting next week, which will be followed by a meeting of the Committee on Policy to approve and get the feedback of member states on the work plan that would have been discussed at the planning meeting. The Committee on Policy will probably meet in later this year or early 2023. This will be followed by the 10th meeting of the COMSIT sometime in early fall 2023. And then this will culminate with in 2024 with the ministerial meeting and all the necessary meetings that will take place before the 7th meeting of ministers and high authorities of science and technology. So, Madam Chair, in short, we would like to kindly ask CD to approve this revised schedule for the 3-year ministerial cycle of the sector of science and technology. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robert. Colleagues, we have heard that the science and technology sector has continued to work, and the reasons that have prevented the ministerial process from strictly following the calendar of CD for the ministerial cycle. However, both the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology, with its newly elected authorities, as well as the Technical Secretariat, are ready to continue advancing the tasks with a view to implementing the plan of action approved by the ministers and to develop the committee's work plan. I offer the floor to those delegations who wish to refer to the information shared by the Technical Secretariat and the adjustment it proposes to the calendar so that the planning meeting of the authorities of the ministerial process of science and technology can be held virtually on November 2nd. Seeing no request for the floor, I take it then that CD agrees with the Secretariat's proposal and approves the modification to the timetable. There being no objection, the adjustments to the calendar of the sectorial process on science and technology as set forth in document CD/doc 370/22 is approved on an exceptional basis and in accordance with the general provisions of the guidelines for sectorial meetings of CD at ministerial level. CD also approves the planning meeting of the authorities of the ministerial process of science and technology to take place virtually on November 2nd, 2022, and it is so approved. I know you'd be happy because we've concluded the agenda items for today's meeting. Therefore, I offer the floor to member states who wish to bring any matter to the attention of this council. I recognize the Dominican Republic.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and we are grateful for the opportunity to take the floor once again. I would now simply like to take advantage of this opportunity in order to motivate the delegations who are here, as well as those participating virtually, for their ministers and high-level authorities in the area of social development come to Santo Domingo for the 5th Redes, which, as was noted, will be held 17-18 November 2022 in the city of Santo Domingo, capital of the Dominican Republic. This meeting will offer an opportunity for dialogue in which the ministers and high-level authorities in the area of social development will be able to have in-depth discussions about the current issues, define priorities, coordinate actions, and specific strategies for cooperation to go forward in the region's social development, and at the same time echo the motto of the meeting, which is to strengthen hemispheric cooperation towards resilient reconstruction and sustainable social development in the Americas. Thank you very much, and we will be happy to receive you in Santo Domingo.
Executive Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for taking the floor a second time, but I neglected in my earlier intervention to introduce Dr. Ruben Contreras, who's joining the Sustainable Development Team. Ruben is an expert in so many of the areas that we are covering in sustainable development, on climate and hydrology and geology and energy. So I'm so thrilled that we are trying to build a cadre of experts who can better serve member states. So Ruben, if you could please stand so member states could see who you are and to simply welcome you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, and of course I join in welcoming you, sir. There being no further requests, or is the Dominican Republic still no? I think that was just legacy. There being no other matter to consider, I thank you for your participation, and before adjourning this meeting, I want to say thank you wholeheartedly for attending the CD meetings this semester. It has been very, very dynamic, very informative, and I do not take that for granted. So thank you so much for those of you who are in the virtual room and those of you here as well. And for that, the meeting is adjourned.